Hi everyone! Today we start our rich and millennial history of men jewelry. And this is a very long history which we're going to develop together in a series of talk, 10 in total. And today we're going to do the introduction together. This introduction is a way to make the long story short. To make it simple, we can divide men jewelry history in two main periods. The first period is very long, like very long. It starts in the very highest ancient times and lasts to the middle of the 19th century. We are here with the figure of the nobility adorning themselves with lots of jewels, necklaces, bracelets, rings, ornaments, badges, all to accumulate with power and to represent the highest status. They were easily compared with an animal, the peacock. You know the peacock, it fans its own tail, so you really have this idea of majesty in it. And adorned men were easily compared to this particular animal. And this will last till the mid-19th century. At the time, we leave the old aristocrat world. The nobility, who was supposed not to work, will let the space to the bourgeois world. The bourgeois was normally more austere, more serious in a way. And this is how you will really have a way to take off one by one the adornments. A few will remain, of course, to be elegant. A watch, a wedding ring, if of course the person was marrying, a few cufflinks or tie ornaments, but this is it. Just a few. The less was the more, in a way, for them. And this is how, in this bourgeois world, we will easily compare it to another animal, the penguin. The penguin, you know, is black and white, like a man for an evening party will be in black tuxedo with white shirt. And this is how you will see how it evolved, how it changed. Today, we are the heirs of both these two types of men. And this is the history we're going to develop, analyzing the codes, the evolution, and the changes altogether. Talk to you soon. Hello everyone, let's go back to a history of men jewelry and shall we begin today talking about symbols of power. Yes, because jewelry is very meaningful for everyone and in particular for men jewelry history. We're going to see that in a political, social or cultural way, jewelry is always related to something important to say as a message from the wearer to the other people. And for a king, an emperor, a Maharaja in India, every sovereign would use jewels as a symbol of power. Let's start with crowns. Yes, a crown could be closed, could be open, could be completely set with jewels, could be in gold, precious metals, but in any case, it's above all, it's on the head. So people will see the person as the sovereign, as the leader. And that's the thing important in many cultures. But it's not the only one symbol. Think about the ring. The ring could be very big, very massive, important. I'm thinking about the Dogon population in Mali, Africa. We really have this figure of the leader in a religious and political way, having this horseman ring decoration. And this represents to all that he is the leader. We have the same thing in Venice, another part of the world. The old Republic of Venice was actually always having a doge, such as the president, and having a big, very massive ring to represent to everyone he was the chosen one. He was the one to guide the population of the city. This ring, very big, could be considered as a scepter. And a scepter is another instrument of power. The ring, the scepter, the crown could be regalias, objects of power, instruments from the coronation day to the whole life of the sovereign to really embody the person as the one leading the people. So as you see, jewels are very meaningful. And this is something we're going to see in all the steps of our series. If you look at a portrait of a prince or a lord in history, and you just pay attention to all the jewels he is wearing, you really understand that The accumulation of jewels is a symbol of wealth. And this is the topic of today. About medieval history, we're going to understand that wealth and social status were related in terms of accumulation. Well, if we consider King Louis XIV, the Sun King, the one who built Versailles, he always had a garniture, a set of jewelry, from the sword to the buttons of the outfits, the shoe buckles, the belt buckles, hat ornaments, shoulder ornaments, completely covered with jewelry. And many princes in Europe did the same. I'm thinking about the Prince Augustus the Strong of Saxony in Germany in particular, who really had an amazing collection, which is today preserved in the Dresden collection, the Green Vault in Saxony. But you really understand that this sort of accumulation was a way to represent they were very important. But this was considered in European history to last until the mid-19th century. Keep this in mind. But this is not the case in every part of the world. And I'm thinking about the Maharajas in India. The great sovereigns of India, they had, with elegance, with prestige, the idea of accumulating lots of necklaces, bracelets, turban ornaments, pieces that would be covering completely the figure of the sovereign to really prove the prestigious and high level. In a way, we can summarize this presentation in the more the prince had, the better he would represent his high status. And this is the image of how wealth was represented with jewelry in the old prince's way. Since the middle of the 19th century, men started to wear less jewelry, refusing the accumulation which was considered not so masculine. But if we look back in the past, we really see the act of wearing jewelry as a symbol of virility. Let's talk about warriors, let's talk about chivalry symbols. Actually, military figures would receive as a reward jewels to symbolize the fact they were victorious in battle, for example. From ancient Egypt in particular, the pharaoh gave large necklaces to the general who was victorious with the army to celebrate the victory of the nation. We really have the same when today we actually give a beautiful sword to a general. I'm thinking about the beautiful collection of swords of the Army Museum in Paris. Most of the swords are celebration swords. They are swords to be worn not in battle, not to be used for that, but to celebrate the prestige of the wearer, to really thank the general for the victory he gave to the nation. And they were as precious as the jewels with the same techniques. These objects, they represent chivalry. Think about the orders of chivalry, another type of jewelry. Big badges to represent how important they were in a group of warriors all together. And this virility exists also in the jewels given to the athletes in the world of sports. Yes, since ancient times, ancient Greece in particular, for the Olympic Games, the champions would receive a medal, like today, or would receive a crown of golden leaves to really represent with a jewel they were victorious. So you see, jewelry and virility work together. It's always a question of culture and of time period which we're talking about. Today we talk about beautiful jewels of faith. And let me tell you one personal story I've learned from Yves Gastou, who was a vintage furniture dealer and, above all, a ring lover. I was very lucky to meet him, and this is the story he told us. When he was little, his mother took him as a child to the church, and after the whole ceremony, he was in line to kiss the hand and the ring on it of the bishop. But he did several times, and his mother noticed and was very angry at him. She said, "What are you doing?" And he answered, "Well, mother, he has such a beautiful ring." This particular anecdote was the starting point of his collection of beautiful rings of all kinds. But I'm focusing today on the bishop's rings. Well, great priests, bishops, abbots, all the figures of clerical authority would have jewels, as the princes. Most of them were born aristocrats. But what's important is to see they would have equivalent jewels. No crowns, but they would have beautiful mitres. No scepters, but they would have fabulously adorned crosses. The golden rings they would wear would be the equivalent of some of the objects of chivalry we have studied together. And it's important to see that there was a higher hierarchy to understand the type of ring they should wear. The Pope, for example, would have a white stone, whether the cardinal would have a red and the bishop a purple one. So you see, there's a meaning in the different kinds of jewels. We can easily recognize these sort of rings because they are very large. They were supposed to be worn on gloved hands. And this is, as a symbol of religious authority, the proof that jewels could be meaningful in many ways. Would you wear a piercing on the body and be considered in the normality? That's, in many cultures, a big issue. Why? Because since the Middle Ages, we consider that piercing the body is an act of transforming the body, creating a new shape, and in a way, a rebellion against God. That's the medieval opinion. But this image, which we can see in lots of paintings, is always present in our mind. Lots of figures considered as nonconformists would be wearing a piercing. And this is the case of the earring. The earring was worn in medieval times on paintings to represent the person was different. Sometimes just to say he was a foreigner. Sometimes to say he was an evil figure. Remember, there was this bad side also, this bad consideration. But out of it, being different doesn't mean being bad. It's just a symbol of being different from the common people. Think about the sailors or the pirates. They were over the seas, not on the earth like everyone. They wore an earring. Some said that it was because it improved their vision, their sight. Well, why not? But we also know that for cultural reasons and for money reasons, if they died by the earth and not over the sea, this golden earring could be the only payment for a decent burial. So you see, there's a meaning to everything. But this idea of piercing the body and being an outcast for some populations is something that was kept in mind over the years, and that changes very recently because it became a trend, a fashion, and this is how things would evolve, just because the culture would evolve and because the people will dare to do things differently. Today, let's go further in wearing jewelry as an act of rebellion. Yes, nonconformists, outcasts, rebels, they wore jewelry, mixing tattoos with leather, with steel jewels together to represent the fact they were different. This is something we all have in mind in the figure of the rocker in particular, musicians, singers, but this old figure came from bikers. Let's go back in time on Road 66 in America to the unfortunately infamous Hells Angels, this gang of bikers crossing the country, destroying places. They were wearing lots of steel jewelry, very aggressively. These jewels, They would be the symbol of their group, of their community, and they will be having lots of skulls, lots of skeletons decoration. They will be the ghost rider's figure in a way. And this act of representing death on their jewels was aggressive according to them, but also representing the fact they were fighting with life. They were living their life the way they wanted, even if tomorrow will not exist. This reality has a long history. We call it memento mori. Memento mori in Latin means remember you're going to die. And representing jewels with skulls, with skeletons, is not something very new. It's very old, since antiquity. It's the idea of thinking that death is part of life and that at one point everyone is going to die. So enjoy the day today, carpe diem, we could say. That was the meaning of these jewels. And this is why many of man's jewels, from the bikers to the rock singers, would have a skull. In 1890, Oscar Wilde published The Picture of Dorian Gray. In this particular novel, he wrote the following sentences: "Those who find ugly meanings in beautiful things are corrupt without being charming. This is a fault. Those who find beautiful meanings in beautiful things are the cultivated. For these there is hope. They are the elect, to whom beautiful things mean only beauty." In this late Victorian era, we kind of have a definition of the dandy. This is the topic of today: men jewelry and dandy. Being a dandy is the research for beauty, not by accumulating, but by choosing a few jewels, a few elements, simple but sophisticated. It's like wearing things like you're not caring, just selecting things in the proper way. The devil's is in the details, as one says, and this is how a few things would be important to reveal how complex is the silhouette of a dandy. In the Decorative Arts Museum in Paris, there is a beautiful collection of a man, Nissim de Camondo, who was a very elegant man in the second half of the 19th century. In Paris, he's got a full collection of tie-pins. Every single tie-pin is different, with different materials, different decorations. All details matter. And that's the thing which is very important, because this complete collection of about 50 pieces would represent how the details will make him the elegant man. And that would be the definition of men and jewelry since the bourgeois world, since the middle of the 19th century. For over a century, we know now that in jewelry with men, less is more. And this is true if you compare the past, when accumulation we've discovered, with the modern gentleman. Just a few jewels: a ring, a pair of cufflinks, a tie-pin, a watch. Even today, a few pieces could be replaced by a simple bracelet. The simple is important. What we have to keep in mind is that in jewelry in general, both for men and women, jewels are mostly given as a present. And most of the presents are love tokens. Yes, you can be a gentleman and be romantic. So let's talk about this aspect of love jewels, which is very important. Because since the 18th century, we know some love tokens that were given as bejeweled objects. Snuff boxes in the 18th century to put tobacco in. They were decorated with kissing doves, with burning hearts, all together to really show the affection of someone. Whether it's pure love, friendship, family love, there will be tokens of love. And lots of men's ring will have this decoration with little hearts, love messages, In French, mostly, because French would be considered the language of love. But you also have some little details with hair. Hair woven. The hair of the beloved one. The hair of the person far away from you because you can't see her, or because the person passed away. This is the case of some rings where you can see some burial decorations, like a tomb on it, people crying over it. Jewels are always meaningful, and they will be important even for these romantic gentlemen. Hi everyone, this is already the last chapter of our series about men jewelry history. Thank you very much for following, it was a great pleasure. But in conclusion, I'd like to give you a few words about a notion which is crucial in this history: transmission. From generation to generation, some jewels were passed down from father to son. In nobility, this is the case of the signet ring. Well, in some countries, including France, there was the loi salique, the Salian law, that obliged men to pass along a noble title to male descendant only. This is why a signet ring, bearing the coat of arms of a noble family, will be considered acceptable for a man to wear. And many very decorated signet rings with precious stones, quality engraving, would be some of the male objects to be passed on from father to son. Today, we consider one piece in particular, the watch. The watch is, to most of the men, considered the acceptable, the jewel par excellence for men to wear. If you talk about the motto of Patek Philippe, they say you never actually own Patek Philippe. You merely look after it for the next generation. This motto is a symbol of men jewelry. There are gifts from people, whether it's the father, whether it's the lover, whether it's friends. Jewels are always given or worn with symbols. And this is one thing we'll always keep in mind as a conclusion. Jewelry is meaningful, and men jewelry is even more meaningful because, as we've seen since the middle of the 19th century, jewelry in accumulation was considered badly. So when you want to wear a piece of jewelry, you need to prove that it's important to you. It's full of senses, full of symbols. And this is why it's so fascinating and will always be.